I live in a small, rather dodgy town near the coast of England, which naturally comes with an unusual amount of rowdy individuals and 16-year-old entitled mums. This incident occurred a little over 2 years ago. I hadn't yet been diagnosed with cancer, but was just 1 week later. I am also noticeably autistic. Anyone who actually pays attention to an interaction with me can easily tell something is off. Thankfully, I am high functioning, which means I am able to function relatively normally in society, but I still have a lot of difficulty being completely oblivious to social cues and such, as well as a few tics here and there. Anyway, on to the story. I was with my mates, we'll call them J and H, and it was a relatively sunny day by British standards, so we had decided to go into town. All three of us had taken our skateboards with us, thinking we could go down to the beach in the evening and skate along the old concrete docks when it had cleared out for the day. In the meantime, we decided to get a coffee and then head out to the skate park. Enter EM and her children. When we arrived at the skate park, we all immediately noticed 3 little kids. The oldest looked around 6 at best, running around, climbing up the ramps, etc. Now, I am by no means a professional at skating, nor are my friends, but we knew that having 3 little kids running around while we skated was not safe. We were mostly concerned for their safety rather than ours, as we could take a tumble. How else do you learn to skate? But the kids could really get hurt. So I decided to go ask the eldest kindly where their mum was, and if they could move to the children's park, which was empty and right next to the skate park. I hadn't even finished the first word when all of a sudden I heard a screech from a few feet behind me. I turned around to see what was happening, and that's when I saw her. Typical rowdy mum, badly dyed dark red hair, cheap earring hoops so big a gymnast could use them, dressed in a dirty pink onesie, that's what we call a single-piece jumpsuit like pajamas in England, a cigarette in one hand and a cheap Stella beer in the other, furiously walking towards the park. She was looking straight at me as she got closer to the park. I decided to ask the kid if this was his mother. Big mistake. As I turned back to face the kid, she suddenly yelled, "Get away from my kids, you creep." At this point, I realized I was in it for the long run. My friends tried to calm her down and explained that I was simply asking the kid if he could move to the dedicated kids park, which I repeat was right next to the skate park. She calmed down a bit, but not much. She was still very irate, saying we had no right to talk to kids at our age. We were barely 16 at the time. We again explained that I was simply asking to know where his mother was and would have gladly come to her first if we knew whose kids they were. At this point, she had calmed down, but was still shooting glares that felt like daggers and insinuated that I was a creep. I was annoyed, but used to these types of interactions in this town. She gathered up her little ones to, quote, make sure they're safe, again shooting me daggers, and told us her kids had the right to play here. We answered that they technically did, but that having them around could be potentially dangerous, as we could hit them by accident while skating. Well, then why don't you skate somewhere else? This is the only skate park in town. The council built it specifically to stop people skating elsewhere and potentially injuring others. Listen, we just want to make sure your children are safe. There's a park with swings and proper slides instead of having them go down the ramps. It's right here, pointing next to the skate park. This is the only place we have to practice safely. I'd even be fine with the kids staying here as long as you keep an eye on them and they don't get in our way. Fine, she said while, I kid you not, blowing cigarette smoke directly into her youngest's face. The day went on without much of note happening, just the kids getting in the way occasionally and crying about not being allowed to use our skateboards, which the mum did make a small fuss about, but it wasn't that bad. Until I sat down at the bench, exhausted from the skating and feeling a migraine coming on, as well as being pretty dizzy. Now, although I hadn't been diagnosed yet, my doctor previously believed I had high blood pressure that caused chronic migraines. I had been given medication that I carried in a small pill box, as I had to take them regularly, as well as some ibuprofen, which I was told to take as soon as I felt a migraine brewing. I had also taken the habit of keeping a few mints in the other compartment of my pill box to wash out the disgusting taste of the pills. and H both came to sit with me, as they knew I had not been well recently, having passed out a few times in school and constantly being plagued with vertigo and migraines. I pulled out my pill box and took my meds with a big gulp of water, and then took a mint, which I offered to both my friends. Each of them took one, and that's when we heard it. "Oh my God, how dare you take drugs in front of my kids?" At this point, knowing I was exhausted, took the lead. "This is just his meds. He's got chronic migraines." "Nonsense. You're making up stories. I saw all three of you take them. You're all so disgusting, doing drugs in a kid's park in front of my children." Bear in mind, she is spewing all these words right in front of her oh-so-delicate children. At this point, had had enough, as all of the previous small pestering had built up, and he was done being polite. "Mate, those were sweets, you crazy lady. Now, please leave us alone. We were kind enough not to purposefully slam into your kids, even though you didn't even keep an eye on them like you said you would. They did the exact opposite of staying out of the way." "How dare you talk to me like this, you jerk!" She then pulled out her phone and in a smug tone said, "I'm calling the police," all with a huge grin on her face. Meanwhile, my migraine had taken a turn for the worse, as I heard her in the background yelling loudly like she was in mortal danger about some kids doing drugs to a poor $9.99 dispatcher. I started puking. Like, seriously puking. The vertigo had kicked in, and my migraine was at full strength. As I did, I heard her screech, "One of them is collapsing right in front of me and my kids. You need to send an officer over here right now." And quickly came to my help. Tried to keep me from falling over as I was dry heaving to the point it was making my throat bleed. Well, went to get my water bottle. The M, upon seeing me puke blood, looked at me and said, "That's disgusting." Now trying to get her to calm down and help as I was in a much worse state than he had ever seen me, asked if she had napkins. She looked at him with those same daggers I had had at the beginning of the day and said no. Besides, that's what he deserves for taking drugs in a kid's park. He can collapse for all I care. Thankfully, this being a small town, the police station is just around the corner from the park. And the officers, yes, officers, 5 in total, drugs and violence are quite common around here, so they had taken the call very seriously, had arrived just in time to hear that last interaction. Although they didn't understand the full situation yet, they were still baffled by her words. I passed out right as I saw them approaching me. I came back to consciousness relatively quickly, I'd say about 20 to 30 seconds later. The EM was droning on and on about how I had clearly taken drugs and was having an overdose or something. H and a policeman were now standing over me, while J explained to another officer the full story. H handed me my water bottle along with my pill box, which the policeman took to inspect. In one compartment was the ibuprofen, clearly identifiable by the bright pink sugar coating on it, at least in the UK, I don't know about elsewhere. And in the other, Tic Tacs. Yes, those drugs we supposedly took were none other than Tic Tacs. The officer just looked confused and handed me an ibuprofen and watched me down a full liter of water before checking me over for any injuries and asking if I was feeling okay. I nodded and slowly got up. By that time, Jay had explained everything to the 4 other officers. The officers were very understanding and patient, considering behind them was an irate woman telling them he was a liar and that we were obviously high. In the end, the 5th officer showed the pillbox to the 4 others, who had found nothing while searching my bag. They all looked at the Tic Tac compartment dumbfounded. I heard Jay say, "They are clearly Tic Tacs." One of the officers took one out and put it in his mouth and just smirked. They then walked back my way and handed me back the pillbox. The officer then pointed out that I didn't look well at all and was very pale and just offered to walk me back home, as he didn't feel comfortable leaving me to walk that far alone. I gladly accepted that offer and made a big show of offering all the officers a Tic Tac as I left. Not sure what happened to the EM, as me and my friends all decided to just go back to mine so I could rest and we could duke it out on Smash Bros. But the 4 officers did stay behind, so I think she got a stern talking to. A few days later, I was brought to the hospital, where they discovered that the supposed chronic migraines that had made me pass out were, in fact, due to leukemia.
So my husband, 42 mean, and me, 31F, have been married for 12 years. We have 2 kids, 8 meaner and 4F. Our marriage is not great. His mother and sister often give unsolicited advice on my parenting, our marriage, and life in general. It is better in the last few months since I sat down my husband multiple times. We talked, and this time he listened, so they backed off. Not completely, but it is better. In the last few weeks, my husband started mentioning having a 3rd child, which fills me with dread. I love children, always wanted a big family, but it would be too much. I cook, clean, take care of kids, and work part-time from home. He doesn't really help with the house, which I am fine with, nor with kids, which is a problem. I changed all diapers, woke up at night, I take care of fevers, doctor appointments, school, play dates, everything. The mere thought of now going through another pregnancy, then taking care of a baby, makes me want to cry. I know I would have to do it all practically alone because my husband provides, and women have been doing it for centuries. I should pull my weight and not be spoiled. It all culminated last night. After another of his, "I take great care of you and kids and we should have a 3rd" monologues, I snapped. I told him that he really doesn't. That kids barely know him. When he comes home from work, he doesn't pay attention to them, except to snap on our daughter when she is too loud. He doesn't know anything about our days because he doesn't ask, and I stopped telling him because he wasn't listening anyway. He is not the great father nor husband as he likes to preach, and I have no desire to be a single mom of a 3rd child. 2 are quite enough, thank you. He stared at me dumbfounded, then called me a C-word, delusional and ungrateful, then stormed out to his mother's house.
How one teacher changed the way I talk, write, and connect with people. Hey, I've got a story that's been on my mind lately, and I just wanted to share it here because it really changed the way I approach conversations, writing, and just connecting with people in general. So here's the deal. I used to be a pretty average kid. School, sports, video games, hanging out with friends, nothing too deep. But then COVID happened, and I was stuck at home doing virtual school for what felt like forever. I couldn't see my friends or anyone else in person, and honestly, I started to feel pretty isolated. My parents noticed I wasn't doing well with it, and they decided to transfer me to a private Catholic school about 15 minutes away from home. At first, I didn't think it would be any different from what I'd already experienced. I joined some sports teams, made some friends, and life seemed pretty normal again. But by junior year, things started to feel different. The school shifted its focus, and instead of PE or weightlifting, which I loved, we had classes like ethics and morality, and Catholic teachings on philanthropy. At first, I'll admit I was skeptical. I wasn't sure what all of this would teach me, and nor did I have an ounce of interest in this field. Then came my ethics and morality class, and that's where things really started to change for me. I'll never forget the first day. My teacher, we'll call him Mr. Smith, started talking about how he gave away most of his money and clothes to people who needed them. I thought, okay, that's nice and all, but no way this guy is actually doing that. I thought it was straight BS, if I'm going to be honest with y'all. Fast forward a couple of weeks. I'm in the drive-thru at McDonald's with my friends around midnight, coming back from a party. And guess who I see? Mr. Smith, chilling in his Prius next to us. We roll down the window to say what's up. We were laughing because what are the odds of running into him there? Especially at midnight. But then, as we go to pay for our order, the cashier tells us it's already been paid for by the car in front of us. Mr. Smith stuck to his teachings, and that's where everything changed. That moment really stuck with me. It was like the world opened up. From that point on, I started paying more attention in class. Mr. Smith wasn't just teaching us about ethics. He was teaching us how to see people, how to really connect with them. He talked about how privileged we were to have the lives we had, and how with that privilege came a responsibility to give back. But more than that, he taught us that it wasn't enough to just talk about helping others. You actually have to show up and do something about it. This lesson didn't just change the way I thought about helping others. It changed how I interacted with everyone. I started thinking about what I said to people and how I said it. It wasn't just about filling the silence or sounding smart. It was about speaking with intention, empathy, and care. I put this into practice when I started volunteering at a Catholic center in Kansas City. Every morning, hundreds and sometimes even thousands of people who were homeless would come in for a hot meal for breakfast. I was on kitchen duty a lot, but I also took time to sit down with some of the guests. I didn't have much to offer beyond food and a smile, but I tried to make them feel seen. It was the little things, saying, "God bless you," asking about their day, or just listening to their stories. It made me realize how much language and human connection matter, especially when someone feels invisible. These experiences made me appreciate the way I use writing and language as well. I was always a C student in English. I didn't understand how the work was helping me, nor did I care. But as I formed my path where I was dedicated to being the best version of myself, I learned how to express myself as well. I went from my highest English grade ever in my first 10 years of school, being an 84%, to being nominated for essay awards for a multitude of my works in junior and senior year. I love writing essays now. I don't always have the best grammar or citations or any of the little stuff, but the idea of expressing myself will always resonate with me now. Throughout these experiences and the lessons that I've learned, I've changed the way I talk to people, write to people, and express myself to people. I speak from the heart and not the mind, and I have my great teacher to thank for that. I no longer speak just to fill the void. I branch the void together. Honestly, looking back, I don't know where I'd be without Mr. Smith's lessons. He taught me that language isn't just about talking, it's about making a meaningful impact, and the way we connect with people. That's something that's going to stick with me for the rest of my life. So if you've had a teacher or a moment in your life that completely changed the way you communicate with others, I'd love to hear about it. Language is powerful, and I think we all can do better at using it to connect on a deeper level. Thanks for reading.